You're listening to The Secret to My Success, an interview-style podcast that asks our guests what trait, skill, or characteristic they possess that's made them a success. Hosted by Shelby Skurhawk.
Today we're talking about the incredible power our minds have. Now, in my last episode, I mentioned a health scare that I've been going through. And I mentioned the power of neutral thinking as a better alternative to positive thinking. Basically, thinking through things in terms of facts, what I know, what I can control. And basically, when it comes to the possibility of breast cancer, they're pretty much not in control of anything. There's nothing I could do to make the suspicious calcifications less suspicious, or make the biopsy process, which I swear is like a medieval torture device, any better. But I'm thrilled to say that the biopsy result was benign, and I can definitely breathe easier until my next mammogram follow-up. But all of this got me thinking about some of the amazing insight that I've gleaned from my guests this year, and it's all been about having the right mindset to overcome just about anything. So when things are going well, we have full faith in our ability to thrive, to kick ass and take names, so to speak. But when things are bad, when it seems like every turn there's some new obstacle just to punch us in the gut, that's when we really have to rely on that mental strength, literally that mental muscle to get us through the hard times. So for this episode, I've put together the 4 best takeaways or lessons I've learned from my guests on The Secret to My Success about overcoming challenges and the power that our minds have in that. So, lesson number 1. You have incredible power to help others, even when you think that you could barely help yourself. So on episode 5, we sat down with Amy Morin, who suffered several losses in her family, including becoming widowed at the age of 26. She's a writer and a psychotherapist, so Amy sat down and wrote something to kind of help her get through the day. It was a journal entry of sorts. But that journal not only helped Amy recover from her loss, but it's really become kind of a daily affirmation for many people who find themselves just stuck in their mind, unable to really move forward.
After a little bit of thinking about, this isn't fair and I shouldn't have to go through this again, I was reminded that that's not what mentally strong people do. And if there was anything that I'd learned through my series of losses, it was that it only takes one bad habit to keep you stuck. And so I sat down and I wrote a list of all the things mentally strong people don't do. And I would read that list over to myself whenever I needed it. And so after a few days of reading through it, because I would read it, refer back to it constantly, I thought, well, if this is helpful to me, maybe it would be helpful to somebody else. And so I published it online thinking maybe somebody else would find some solace in it too, but I didn't imagine that it would go viral. But it was read by millions of people. Before I knew it, it was being, retweeted by celebrities and posted on Facebook pages of these huge accounts, and everybody was talking about it. And my phone started ringing from national news stations asking me about mental strength. And then Forbes magazine picked it up, and it went on to be read by 50 million people, which was nothing I had expected. I had written, writing was my side hustle. It was something I usually just did in my spare time, but it wasn't something I hadn't, this one was different. I didn't write it for money. I just wrote it from my heart. And, but certainly never imagined it would change the course of my career, but it certainly has.
The coping mechanism that Amy created and used for herself, something that she really just used, she created just to get through the day. It ended up helping many, many others. So that brings me to lesson number 2, which is when you go through difficult times, you have the unique ability to come out better from it. Now, no one wants to go through hard times, but when life doesn't really give you a choice, Amy can tell you firsthand that you're gonna make it, that you're gonna be okay. And that's something that's very reassuring to hear when you're going through just the hardest of times.
This realization then that I am still living. I still have, I've got a lot in me, and I can make something better of this. I mean, it sounds like this concept of post traumatic growth, creating kind of a positive change after having experienced trauma. As a psychotherapist, how do you advise someone who's experiencing that trauma, is feeling, victimized from life and is right in the middle of it? How do you advise them or convince them that post-traumatic growth is really possible?
Yeah, I think it's important, early on. I think it almost seems, if you say to somebody like something good will come out of this, it almost seems sort of patronizing because people are thinking, yeah, right. And
Yeah.
so early on, it's just a matter of reminding them that they'll get through it. And that sometimes it's a matter of thinking, well, this is tough right now, but what could life be like 5 years down the road? Are you still going to feel this bad? And for some people, just having enough hope to know, okay, this is painful and it hurts, but it's not going to feel bad forever. And then once they kind of get through it a little bit and they're out of the crisis, to then start talking about, oh, what's something that you've learned? And for some people, it's, well, I learned I was stronger than I thought I was. I never imagined I could go through something like
Yeah.
that. And then just taking those little things that people learn and say, now what are you going to do with that information? How are you going to apply that to your life moving forward? And for some people, it might just be something simple as saying, okay, I'm a little stronger than I think, so I'm going to go out and do things I didn't think I could do. Or sometimes people will say, well, I no longer worry about those little things in life that I thought were important because now I look at the big picture. So just a matter of figuring out, well, what lessons did you learn and what are you going to do with those lessons?
So, Amy found the mental fortitude to turn a challenge into an opportunity. And it was almost accidental. I mean, she wrote that blog post for herself, and then she published it, and it turned viral. It got picked up by several media outlets. And then all of a sudden, she had a book publicist reaching out to her and encouraging her to write a whole book about it. So she was able to turn that difficult time in her life into something meaningful that actually ended up being a career path for her. So that's a trait that my guest on episode 3 says is a whole other kind of personality type. So my lesson number 3 is that the most successful people aren't type A personalities, they're type R.
So, with all that's going on in the world, from Florida school shootings to wildfires and mudslides in California, Type R seems more relevant than ever. And Type R is really a mindset, a skill set, and identity. And Type Rs are the resilient individuals, leaders, businesses, families, and communities that turn challenges into opportunities in times of upheaval, crisis, and change. And so it's really a mindset and identity. And now more than ever, dealing with stress and challenges is about developing our own abilities to learn and innovate. Really, the whole notion of resilience, you hear people say, I can't wait to get back to normal, or I'm going to bounce back, etc. And the reality is that not only can't you get back to where you were before a crisis or a stressful situation, but in reality, it's not positive, or why would you want to? Why would you want to use the experience you've been through as an opportunity to learn more about yourself, about your circumstances, and to grow, innovate, and next iteration of who you are? So transformative resilience is really about using adversity, stress, and challenges to your advantage. It's about springing forward rather than bouncing back. We discovered that there's 6 key characteristics, kind of like the Mary Poppins umbrella. So the umbrella doesn't just shade us, but it really, in the case of Mary Poppins, took her to a new location on her journey. And, these apply to individuals, they apply to families, to organizations. So the 6 characteristics are really adaptability, a healthy relationship to control, continual learning, a sense of purpose, leveraging support, and active engagement. And the reality is that probably each of us is stronger in certain of these characteristics than others, but we can always strengthen and grow once we're aware of what our default mindset is.
So, a default mindset. I mean, what's your default mindset? I know a lot of us, if left unchecked, our default goes to the worst case scenario often. And that's what I mentioned a little bit at the beginning of this episode, that the vacillation, I guess, between positive and negative thinking, oftentimes the best way to go about it is something called neutral thinking. So how do you take inventory of what your thinking is, really? So my final lesson comes from Karlyn Brashenko. She was my guest on episode 13. Now, she had written a book called Zen Your Work, Create Your Ideal Work Experience Through Mindful Self-Mastery. And in the book, she explains solutions for dealing with difficult workplaces or difficult people. But she says that the key here is that you have to be able to admit your role in all of this, that you have to be able to know where your mind is and what you are doing to contribute to the situation. So lesson number 4 is learning to practice mindful self-mastery. Basically learning how to take control and how to understand all of those thoughts and feelings that are going through our minds at any given point, and how to wield a little bit of control of that very powerful mind of ours.
So I have 3 principles of mindfulness that really go throughout the book. The first is to be aware. So becoming aware of, oh, here are some things that are going on a subconscious level that I didn't really think about beforehand, and maybe some different ways I could go about it to make sure they don't happen. So that's awareness. The second is being non-judgmental, just trying to view things just as they are, zooming out almost as if you're looking at a chessboard without assigning meaning like this is good or bad or better or worse or right or wrong. We love to make judgments about things. We like to put things in categories. And sometimes the very best thing you can do is just say, okay, this thing happened. It's not good. It's not bad. It happened. And how do we move forward from this in the way that best serves our goals? And the third thing is being in the present moment, really making sure you're not letting things, or especially negative experiences from the past, impact what you're experiencing now, and not letting fear of all the bad things that might happen in the future if things go horribly wrong. You're not letting that impact what you're experiencing right now. So just focusing on what you have in front of you in this time.
Focusing on what you have in front of you in this time. That was something that I think applies to a lot of the lessons that we've learned in this episode today. These 4 different takeaways that I've learned from this show is to realize that I can't control what happens in life. All I have control of is my mindset, my attitude, how I think about things, and then how I react and act on things. It's been a tough year, but the most important thing I've learned, all you have control of is your mind and your thoughts and what you do and what your actions are. I guess that's all you can ask for. With that, thank you for listening to this episode of Secret to My Success. If you like the show, please leave a comment on iTunes or Google Podcasts, and tell a friend about the show. That's the only way that small independent podcasters like myself can really grow, is by getting word of mouth from other listeners who appreciate the content and enjoy the show. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.